Hello, children, and welcome to Story Time with Father Bill. I hope you're enjoying the very first days of your summer vacation, huh? And no more in house school learning. So I hope you have a great summer. Before we share our story, which is The Selfish Giant, let's share our prayer. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus in the morning, Jesus in the noontime. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus when the sun goes down. Love him, love him. Love him in the morning, love him in the noontime, love him, love him, love him when the sun goes down. Serve him, serve him, serve him in the morning, serve him in the noontime, serve him, serve him, serve him when the sun goes down. So let's always remember, children, that Jesus is with us at every moment of every day of our lives. Jesus loves us so much. Our story today is The Selfish Giant by Oscar Wilde. He's a famous person, a famous writer, Oscar Wilde. The Selfish Giant. The artwork is especially beautiful. So I'll try to show you the pictures as well. So I hope you can see a castle with some children playing in the garden. So let's listen well. Every afternoon, as they were coming from school, the children used to go and play in the giant's garden. It was a lovely, large garden with soft green grass. Here and there over the grass stood beautiful flowers like stars. And there were 12 peach trees that in the springtime broke out into the delicate blossoms of pink and pearl, and in the autumn bore rich fruit. The birds sat on the trees and sang so sweetly that the children used to stop their games in order to listen to them. How happy we are here, they cried to each other. There was the giant. One day the giant came back. He had been to visit his friend, the Cornish ogre, and he had stayed with him for 7 years. After the 7 years were over, the giant had said all that he had to say, for his conversation was limited, and he determined to return to his own castle. When he arrived, he saw the children playing in the garden. "What are you doing here?" he cried in a very gruff voice, and the children ran away. "My own garden is my own garden," said the giant. "Anyone can understand that, and I will allow nobody to play in it but myself." So the giant built a high wall around his castle and put up a notice board: "Trespassers will be prosecuted." He was a very selfish giant. The poor children had now nowhere to play. They tried to play on the road, but the road was very dusty and full of hard stones, and they did not like it. They used to wander round the high wall when their lessons were over and talk about the beautiful garden inside. How happy we were there, they said to each other. Then the spring came, and all over the country there were little blossoms and little birds. Only in the garden of the selfish giant it was still winter. The birds did not care to sing in it, as there were no children, and the trees forgot to blossom. Once a beautiful flower put its head out from the grass, but when it saw the notice board, it was so sorry for the children that it slipped back into the ground again and went off to sleep. The only people who were pleased were the snow and the frost. Spring has forgotten this garden, they cried, so we will live here all year round. The snow covered up the grass with her great white cloak, and the frost painted all the silver trees. Then they invited the north wind to stay with them, and he came. He was wrapped in furs, and he roared all day about the garden and blew the chimney pots down. This is a delightful spot, he said. We must ask the hail on a visit. So the hail came every day for 3 hours. The hail rattled on the roof of the castle till he broke most of the slates, and then he ran round and round the garden as fast as he could go. He was dressed in gray, and his breath was like ice. I cannot understand why the spring is so late in coming, said the selfish giant, as he sat at the window and looked out at his cold, white garden. I hope there will be a change in the weather. But the spring never came, nor the summer. The autumn gave golden fruit to every garden, but to the giant's garden she gave none. He is too selfish, she said. So it was always winter there, and the north wind and the hail and the frost and the snow danced about through the trees. The giant is looking out of the window of the castle. One morning, the giant was lying awake in bed when he heard some lovely music. It sounded so sweet to his ears that he thought it must be the king's musicians passing by. It was really only a little linnet singing outside his window, but it was so long since he had heard a bird sing in his garden that it seemed to him to be the most beautiful music in the world. Then the hail stopped dancing over his head, and the north wind ceased roaring, and a delicious perfume came to him through the open casement. I believe the spring has come at last, said the giant, and he jumped out of bed and looked out. What did he see? What did he see? He saw a most wonderful sight. Through a little hole in the wall the children had crept in, and they were sitting in the branches of the trees. In every tree that he could see there was a little child, and the trees were so glad to have the children back again that they had covered themselves with blossoms and were waving their arms gently above the children's heads. The birds were flying about and twittering with delight, and the flowers were looking up through the green grass and laughing. It was a lovely scene. Only in one corner it was still winter. It was the farthest corner of the garden, and in it was standing a little boy. He was so small that he could not reach up to the branches of the tree, and he was wandering all round it, crying bitterly. The poor tree was still quite covered with frost and snow, and the north wind was blowing and roaring above it. Climb up, little boy, said the tree, and it bent its branches down as low as it could, but the boy was too tiny, and the giant's heart melted as he looked out. How selfish I have been, he said. Now I know why the spring would not come here. I will put that poor little boy on the top of the tree, and then I will knock down the wall, and my garden shall be the children's playground forever and ever. He was really very sorry for what he had done. So the giant crept downstairs and opened the front door quite softly and went out into the garden. But when the children saw him, they were so frightened that they all ran away, and the garden became winter again. Only the little boy did not run, for his eyes were so full of tears that he did not see the giant coming. And the giant stole up behind him and took him gently in his hand and put him up into the tree. And the tree broke at once into blossom, and the birds came and sang on it. And the little boy stretched out his 2 arms and flung them round the giant's neck and kissed him. This is a bigger book. I gotta look around it here. So the giant with his axe is doing what? Breaking down the wall, huh? And the other children, when they saw that the giant was not wicked any longer, came running back, and with them came the spring. It is your garden now, little children, said the giant, and he took a great axe and knocked down the wall. And when the people were going to market at 12 o'clock, they found the giant playing with the children in the most beautiful garden they had ever seen. All day long they played, and in the evening they came to the giant to bid him goodbye. But where is your little companion? The giant said. The boy I put into the tree. He loved him the best because he kissed him. We don't know, answered the children. He has gone away. You must tell him to be sure and come here tomorrow, said the giant. But the children said that they did not know where he lived and had never seen him before. And the giant felt very, very sad. Every afternoon, when school was over, the children came and played with the giant. But the little boy whom the giant loved was never seen again. The giant was very kind to all the children, yet he longed for his first little friend, and often spoke of him. How I would like to see him, he used to say. Years went over, and the giant grew very old and feeble. He could not play any more, so he sat in a huge armchair and watched the children at their games and admired his garden. I have many beautiful flowers, he said, but the children are the most beautiful flowers of all. One winter morning, the giant looked out of his window as he was dressing. He did not hate the winter now, for he knew that it was merely the spring asleep and that the flowers were resting. Suddenly he rubbed his eyes in wonder and looked and looked. It certainly was a marvelous sight. In the farthest corner of the garden was a tree quite covered with lovely white blossoms. Its branches were all golden, and silver fruit hung down from them, and underneath it stood the little boy he had loved. Downstairs ran the giant in great joy and out into the garden. He hastened across the grass and came near to the child. And when he came quite close to his face grew red with anger, and he said, Who hath dared to wound thee? For on the palms of the child's hands were the prints of 2 nails, the marks, the prints. And the prints of 2 nails were on the little feet. Who hath dared to wound thee? Cried the giant. Tell me, that I may take my big sword and slay him. Nay, answered the child, but these are the wounds of love. These are the wounds of love. Here's the little boy. Who art thou? Said the giant. And a strange awe fell on him, and he knelt before the little child. And the child smiled on the giant and said to him, You let me play once in your garden. Today you shall come with me to my garden, which is paradise. And when the children ran in that afternoon, they found the giant lying dead under the tree, all covered with white blossoms. Our story, The Selfish Giant, is a beautiful, beautiful story, huh? What happens when we're selfish? We know what it means to be selfish, that we want to hang on to our toys, we want to hang on to that and not share. You know, it's mine, it's mine. I'm not always very generous. And what happened to the giant? His heart became like winter, huh? Not just his garden became winter because he wouldn't share it with the lively children, but his heart became cold and empty until he had a change of heart and realized, I can't be like this. I can't be selfish. This doesn't make me happy. And once he opened his heart and opened back his garden to the little ones, it was spring. And spring is always a time of new life. The birds are singing, the trees blossoming with beautiful, beautiful leaves and the new flowers, So when we open our hearts, like Jesus opened his heart in love to us, the little boy was really Jesus, right? Jesus. And when we open our hearts to Jesus, like Jesus opened his heart to us, when we open our hearts to other people, when we become generous, and kind and willing to share, then beautiful, beautiful things happen. So we need that beauty in our country, We need for people to not be selfish, to not just think about themselves, but to think about everybody and to be concerned about how everybody is doing, how everyone is feeling. When someone's hurting or sad, we need to care. We need to reach out to that person and really listen to her, really listen to him so that we can better understand. That's a beautiful lesson. We don't want to be selfish. The opposite of selfish is what? Being generous. So let's try to be generous. Let's finish our time together, children, with our prayer. Jesus, help all people who are sick today to get better soon. Jesus, help all doctors and nurses to bring healing to people sick in hospitals. Give them courage and keep them safe. Jesus, help my mom and dad and my family to take good care of each other, to be generous and kind. Jesus, help me to trust that you never leave my family or me alone. Jesus, help all people who are alone today or feel really sad or worried. So let's all say amen. Amen. We'll see you next week for Children's Story Time with Father Bill. Have a great week, children.